everyone, Michelle Seidling here with another episode of Food Experience Unplugged. Today we'll explore overcoming chronic depression through food choices. Here to help us do that is certified nutrition and wellness consultant Cheryl Major. This podcast is available on multiple platforms, including YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and others. Please be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform to be informed as new episodes become available. If you enjoyed today's episode or any of our episodes, please rate and review the podcast on your favorite platform. As always, be sure to check out our website at foodexperienceunplugged.com for some resources as you begin your health journey. Cheryl Major, welcome to Food Experience Unplugged.
Thank you, Michelle. I am so excited to be here. Thank you for this opportunity to share. I can't wait.
You're welcome. Oh, it's a pleasure to have you. And you have an amazing story of overcoming chronic depression, not a typical way through medication or other things, but through food choices.
Yeah.
Oh, that is amazing. Will you just before we go into your story a lot, but will you just kind of introduce yourself a little bit and
Sure.
why you decided to share your message to begin with?
Sure. I'd be happy to do that. Name is Cheryl Major. I went to Boston University. I have a degree in education. So the teaching and the sharing comes from that, and it comes naturally too. I like to help people. And I have been a full-time residential realtor for 35 years now. Who I am now, though, is someone who teaches people how to change their life, whether it has to do with depression or weight or medical issues. It's about backing off the things that they're doing in small steps for big changes. And I came to this decision quite by accident. I did not intend to share my history because I frankly wasn't proud of it. I felt defective. I felt embarrassed. I was afraid to share my depression with the world for fear that people wouldn't hire me to do my job. And I was actually in a course about creating online programs. And the question was, do you feel that you have something that you could share that maybe you could write a book on, or maybe you could have a big program on? And I said yes. I usually, am one who will raise my hand in class, and I said yes. And I said it was about health. And fortunately, the woman who was running the program kind of dug down a little bit, and she said, well, would you be comfortable in sharing what it is? And I waited probably 5 or 6 seconds, but it seemed like an hour to me because my head was doing this. Should I admit it? Should I talk about this? Should I say I'm a chronically depressed person? What'll happen? And I just finally said, yes, I'm depressed. I was depressed. I was a chronically depressed person, and I disappeared my depression. And I think that I could make a difference to people by sharing that. And that's how I ended up here with you.
Oh my goodness. Wow. That is amazing. Just a few comments from a teacher to motivate you to share your story.
Yep. Yeah. And she challenged me. She challenged me to be brave. And I won't say it was easy because it wasn't. I had no idea what the ramifications would be. So I just took a leap of faith and blurted it out. And the rest is history. I'm still blurting stuff out. So
sure. Well, and I guess an act of bravery, you're here as well to share your story and how you've turned that around to help so many people. We would be privileged to hear your story. Will you share your story with us?
Of course, I'd be happy to. I became chronically depressed when I was 12 years old. I just started crying. I couldn't stop crying. I cried all the time. I was just an unhappy teenager. Well, a lot of teenagers are unhappy for different reasons, but I was depressed. And it went on for years and years. And sometimes it was better. Sometimes it was worse. I was on and off antidepressants quite a few times. I was on Prozac. I was on Zoloft. I was on Paxil. And Paxil probably worked the best for me, but I didn't feel like myself. So I was on and off and on and off. And I tried St. John's wort. I tried different things, exercising, walking. And it always came back. It always got me. And it was after my sister died that my husband said to me, Cheryl, aren't you tired of being depressed? And that really brought me up short because I guess I thought I was hiding it from him too. I mean, it wasn't something that I talked about with really anybody. So that's when I went and I got on the medication. And you expect that medication is going to make you happy. You have to wait 2 weeks. 2 weeks, I'll be happy. I couldn't wait. It was like, okay, 4 more days and I'll be happy. 3 more days, I'll be happy. The truth is that antidepressants don't make you happy. What they do is they dull the depression so that you can function in other ways. At least that's how it was for me. So fast forward on and off with this stuff. Fast forward to 2012, and we were out in California at my niece's wedding, and my husband had been having really bad problems with. We didn't know what he had a whole bunch of symptoms. He was borderline diabetic, had to check his sugar twice a day. He had nerve pain, neuropathy. He had muscle weakness. I mean, he would go upstairs from the first to second floor. He'd have to sit down midway because he just wasn't strong enough to go up. And he would have brain fog. He had memory loss. He had a ton of issues. And he would get these waves of dark desperation, and he would have to go to bed and sleep for a day or two. Well, one of them happened out in California. And we said, we just have to figure this out. So the only medication he was on was a statin. He was on Lipitor, and he was on a mega dose of Lipitor, 80 milligrams a day. And because of his family history of heart disease and cholesterol levels, he had been on for about 7 years, I think it was. So we came back and we looked at the side effects, possible side effects of Lipitor specifically, since that's what he was on. And it turned out he was the poster child for side effects. We checked off just about everything that could possibly happen to a human being. So we were on a mission to get him off the Lipitor, get him backed off from diabetes because his sugar was very high. His mother died of heart disease and diabetes at 63. And he had another sibling who had a heart attack at 39 and was also diabetic. So this was a huge, I mean, the gene pool was not on his side. So we were fortunate enough to listen to PBS one day, and we saw Dr. Mark Hyman, and he had just released The Blood Sugar Solution, his book back then I think it came out in 2012. And we said, this sounds like something that might help us. So we bought it, we lived by it, it became our Bible. We read it, we cleaned out our pantry, our freezer, our fridge, we gave stuff away, threw it away, and we started eating whole, healthy food. And that's all we ate. We got rid of sugar, dairy, gluten, preservatives, anything in a box, any kind of frozen dinners, gone. And what happened was he was able to stop testing his sugar because his blood glucose normalized, his cholesterol normalized. But what happened for me was in about 6 months' time after we started this, I had to sell my parents' house. My parents had both passed away, and I didn't want to do it. And we were waiting for me to be a depressed mess. And I wasn't. I was sad, but I was appropriately sad. And anyone who has ever dealt with depression knows that there is a huge, huge, huge difference between being depressed and being appropriately sad. And I haven't been depressed since. What we realized was my chronic depression was gone. It was gone. And although every day isn't, tiptoe through the tulips, it's, life happens and some days are great and some days, you deal. But I have not been chronically depressed in 8 going on 9 years. And it's because of the food changes in large part. There are other, it's not quite that simple, but that's the biggest part of it is the food choices that I made, that I changed. That's what did it.
Wow. Wow, that is amazing. That's you because you were so focused on helping your husband
Yep.
to overcome his health challenges that it was kind of you were along for the ride, so to speak, I guess.
Absolutely. And the weird thing is I never liked to cook. I just didn't like to cook. And I started cooking in a different way. And I really like to cook now. I like the foods that I cook. And I teach people how to make dishes, how to eat and enjoy cooking and keep it simple and cook in large quantities, but keep it healthy and delicious and use spices and all this stuff. So it can be fun. And I like to share that with people, the fun aspect of it.
Now, just kind of to back up just a minute, I mean, unfortunately, depression is very prevalent in our society.
Yeah.
Now, what contributes to that, and why is it so prevalent, and why is it so? How is that it's currently managed in I guess in today's medical world?
Well, I think that's a great question, and I think today's medical world is more sickness care than it is health care. I've never had an allopathic or traditional doctor ask me what I'm eating. And I think that should be the first question. But I think that it's so important that we take a look at the food. It's not just the food. It's about it's about inflammation in our bodies and reducing the level of our inflammation. It's about what we're putting on our skin. Our skin is the largest organ that we have. It's about what's in there. It's about processed food. I guess the biggest red flag is, do you eat processed food? Well, I think most of us do. I think it's the rare bird who doesn't eat some sort of processed food. But in that processed food, there are inflammatory foods. There are tons of sugars. I mean, on my website, I've got a document that has the 60 plus names of sugar that people can download, because it's not just sugar. It's treacle, it's brown sugar, it's maltodextrin, it's a whole bunch of things. And our foods are loaded with them. And especially if they say no fat or low fat, fat has a lot of flavor. So when they take out the fat, they have to replace the flavor, and they replace it by putting sugar and, unfortunately, cheap fats, because the bottom line is not our bottom line. The bottom line for processed food companies is are they in the black? Are they profitable? And we pay for it with our health. So for some people, it's not just a one answer. I mean, if I'm going to say one thing, get processed foods off your plate, out of your life, right there, you'll be good to go. It kind of depends on your gene pool. What are you sensitive to? Are you non-celiac gluten sensitive? Which means you're not a celiac patient, but gluten still affects you. Then gluten can contribute to depression. I mean, gluten can be really nasty. It can give you migraines. It can contribute to depression. Sugar can do the same. Sugar can contribute to depression. And even if you're not sensitive to gluten, it's a good idea to back off it a little bit, because they're finding that so many of the people who are dying with mental decline, whether it's Alzheimer's or whether it's some sort of dementia, when they autopsy their brains, they're finding amyloid plaques, and gluten contributes to that. So even if you're not sensitive, it's a good idea to back off that and find a non-gluten substitute. It doesn't mean you can never have it, and I tell people this. Doesn't mean you can never have it. It means that you should use it as a treat. So is it sugar? Is it gluten? Is it dairy? It depends how these things affect you. But if you can use dairy, use gluten, use sugars, use processed foods, which if they're highly processed, if you're eating a highly processed bread or cracker, that can start to change to sugar in your mouth before you even swallow it. And then you go down the rabbit hole with this stuff, because it causes insulin resistance. It causes leptin resistance. That messes up your hormones, and your body's not signaling, your gut isn't signaling your brain to stop eating. Your brain is screaming for nutrition, and you reach for another Pop-Tart. It's just this, it's just this diabolical thing that they've gotten us into. And it's simple. It's so simple that it's hard in our processed food world. Did I answer your question? I don't know. I kind of get excited.
No, I think so. Now, what were your food choices like in your early years, or just the years leading up to when you finally made those food those changes in
Yeah.
your diet?
In my early years, I'll give you, for instance, my dad, when he came home from work, he would come in the back door, and the first question was, "What's for dinner?" Second question was, "What's for dessert?" My mom was a tremendous baker, and there was dessert at every single dinner. And I have the cavities, I have the fillings to prove it. But my choices were, we had kind of an English. We weren't English, but we had kind of the meat, potatoes, and boiled vegetables until they're green or gray and limp, and no spices, no ethnic foods of any kind. We would have white rice, minute rice, that kind of thing. So I think that the food choices when I was young, I didn't like them, and lots of meat. And I just have never been a meat eater. I just don't like it. But when I was able to make my own choices, I still chose badly, because I would choose wheat bread instead of white bread. Well, wheat bread, if it's not whole grain, is kissing cousin to white bread. It's just right next to it, as far as amping up your sugar levels and your inflammation levels. And but my choices were, I mean, I thought I was choosing well. I would have pizza and maybe skip the cheese and just have vegetables, but I was still eating pizza, which is a processed food. Pizza is not a vegetable, kind of thing. And what else did I eat? Oh my gosh, it's been so long. Oh, lots of pasta. lots of pasta, lots of bread, lots of sandwiches. So I was eating a ton of gluten, lots of cheese, and I mean, it was a whole switch. Um, when I realized that we needed to do this for Rob, it was just flip a switch and that's it. We just got it out of the house, and we stopped going out to eat. We do occasionally, but not a lot. Eating cooking is fun. It's cheaper. You have control over your food choices. I tell my students, my clients, as soon as you go out to eat, you are relinquishing control over what's on your plate. You don't know how it's sourced. You don't know if it's organic or not unless they're loudly proclaiming that it's organic. You don't know what oils have been used. You just don't know. So you're kind of at the mercy of whomever is preparing your food. So we're just real careful. We're very, very careful. And I don't eat everything organic. And people do get wound up about how that's going to blow their food budget. But I refer them to the Clean 15 and the Dirty Dozen from the Environmental Working Group, because that gives them a place to know, are there 2 or 3 things that I absolutely should eat organic, and the rest can be conventional if I feel like it's not in my budget to do that. So I work with people to shape changing, and I believe in small steps for big changes, because it's hard, Michelle, for people to do what we did. It's hard. There are time constraints. There's peer pressure. There are cranky people in the family who don't want to do it. It's a whole big deal. So I
Yeah.
I try to little baby steps.
Now, when he was first, diagnosed with his situation and you decide, okay, we need to make some food choices, how hard or easy was that, mentally from, to kind of transition into, okay, I've got to eat this other stuff versus, what you were
Mm.
doing previously?
Yeah, that's a great question. For us, it was pretty easy because we were scared to death. He was going to be a diabetic. He probably was headed for heart disease, and we just didn't want to go down that road. It had nothing to do with me. The weird thing is, it had nothing to do with me, and I was the one who ended up with the big prize. Well, he's healthy now too, which is great. But it was just an accident for me. It was just an accident. But we were so afraid of the road he was going down. I mean, like I said, his mom died at 63, and we didn't want that to be his future, or his lack of a future. So yeah, we just made up our minds, and we're pretty strong-willed, so we just kind of ripped the band-aid off, is how I tell people we did it. Rip.
Sure. Now, how was it on your side in terms of, okay, you've made different food choices. How was that in kind of working with your doctor and balancing your needs or not needs for medication or for other things to
Oh,
assist you?
yeah, that's a great question. I had actually weaned myself off my last round of Paxil a year or so prior to when we did this, and I was kind of just muddling along and trying to feel better. I was taking SAMe, which is a supplement that helps with mood. But no, I had gotten myself off Paxil. The more times I went on and off it, the more side effects I seemed to have from it. And the last one, I couldn't think clearly. My brain was just, I felt like there was cotton in my head, and I couldn't think clearly. I had, I if I went into a food store and smelled the cooked food, it would make me feel nauseous, and that's actually a side effect. So I said, yeah, I can't do this. I just can't do this. And there's something about me that I'd rather do it myself. I'm pretty independent. I'd rather do it myself. And I didn't want to be dependent on the medication. And I just didn't feel like myself anymore on it. So that's where that came from. It was about a year before, and I was and there's something else that I did too. I did suffer from seasonal affective disorder, when the light goes and the days get shorter and stuff dies in the fall and through the winter. So I got myself one of those little full spectrum lights, and
Okay.
they don't make them anymore, but I found one that hung on my laptop. So I
Mhm.
would just leave it on my laptop for a few hours a day. That helped, and that with the SAMe, I was able to kind of muddle through, but I was still managing it. I had not disappeared it, which is where I am now. I'm just not chronically depressed. I'm not. And it's to anybody listening to this, please, you don't have to suffer like you are. I get it. I just get it. And there's another world. Michelle, there's another world waiting for people. There is, and it's not through antidepressants. It's just not. It's on your plate.
Mm. So you don't currently you don't even need to use the full spectrum light or even anything for your depression.
No, no. I do just because it's part of my regimen. I take prebiotics and probiotics a few times a week. I used to take it every morning, and when I do that, I also take a SAMe. But that's good for brain health, liver health, but it also helps with mood. So I do. That is part of my vitamin and supplement thing that I do. So yeah, that's it.
Okay. Now that you've kind of made that transition, will you talk a little bit about how you're paying that forward in terms of with your own family and sharing your
Mm,
message with clients or with others?
yeah. Oh, I'm happy to do that. I'm dedicated now to getting the word out. And I develop programs and courses. And I'm going to be doing more Facebook Lives, I think, where I'm just going to do something once a week and invite people just to come and listen and talk, and they can ask questions. Family is an interesting question. Family, I've found they ask questions, and sometimes they do stuff, and sometimes they yup me and go right back to what they were doing. So with family, I try. It's up to them. But yeah, I wrote a book that was published in 2018, and I'm about to publish another one this fall. And the first one is my story about how I disappeared my own depression. And then the one that comes out this fall is called The Major Method. I don't have a second to that yet. It'll probably be something like eat like your life depends on it, because it does. But I've had so many people ask me how I eat, what do you eat? So there'll be some education in there, but there'll also be a lot of how do I eat? What do I eat? And I'm paying it forward by finding as many venues as I possibly can to reach as many people as I possibly can. And I'm not the food police. In the beginning, Michelle, to be honest with you, I was the food police, and I was really hard and I was really harsh. And what I learned was that I turned people off, because it's not the way most people need to get the message. So that's why my small steps for big changes is what I'm working with now with people, because people have to be able to push something off their plate and replace it with something good, and then push something else off their plate and replace it with something good. And it has to become a lifestyle. And I don't believe in dieting. I don't believe in dieting, because diet truly is a four-letter word. It just doesn't work. They're designed, it's a huge industry too. Dieting is a huge industry. It's billions and billions and billions of dollars. And people do it most of the time to lose weight. And people don't understand your weight is not about your weight. It's just not about your weight. Weight is a symptom of what the food that you've been eating has done inside your body, and it's manifesting as weight, and it's manifesting as belly fat is what we call it now, visceral fat. Some professionals call it. But I like to refer people back to the old movies that I so love. Go watch a movie from the 30s and 40s. You'll see an occasional person who's overweight, who's portly, but you'll see a lot of slim people. It wasn't really until the 70s, until 1970, when the processed food really got hold of us. And the increase in obesity, the increase in diabetes from 1970 up till now is just amazing. And it's about processed foods, but they're addictive. They're designed to be addictive. Again, about the processed food company bottom line. So it's not something that's easy to get that monkey off your back. And I tell people the first thing to do is to get soda off your back. And Michelle, it's so interesting. I just finished the season 2 of the Anti-Diet Solution, and I had a couple of people in there who drank soda. That's what they drank. They drank soda. So we worked with that to get them to drink more water, because they needed to hydrate, but they also needed to get the sugar and all those bad chemicals out of their systems. And they did. I mean, it was a process, and we went through it. I kind of nursed them along, try this, try that. But I've had people say to me, I'm sleeping better. I've lost 5 pounds. And you don't want to lose weight really quickly. If you want to keep it off, you want to lose it gradually. But just doing that one thing has changed people's lives. And you know what else? They're proud of themselves, because they know that they've done something that isn't that easy to do. It's about being successful in every way. So I'm a cheering section a lot of the time. So I like it.
Sure. Now, what is with the people that you work with? What do you feel like their biggest struggle is in just kind of, I guess, getting the ball rolling, so to speak, toward making those different choices?
Part of it is that they've done so many diets, and I think part of it is emotional. I think people get to a point where they try another diet, but in the back of their head, something is saying, "Okay, this never works. It's not going to work, but I'll try it." So there's kind of a defeatist frame of mind there to begin with. Um, I think too that um, I think too that they don't know what to do. I think that when they face getting processed foods out of their life, I think it's I don't have time to cook. It's going to be more expensive. My kids won't eat it. My husband likes his hungry man dinners kind of thing. Um, so it's a whole thing. So it has to be little steps. Has to be encouragement, and they have to have a path. They have to have a path.
Mm. Now, are they hesitant or fearful or have reservations about using food as the solution versus using medication as a solution or using exercise or some other
Yeah.
thing as the solution?
That's a good question, and I'm not a doctor, so I'm not in a position where I can tell them to get off their antidepressants and see how they feel with this. It's something that they have to incorporate into their lifestyle and then address it with their doctor and see if maybe they can back off. And antidepressants, if anybody listening has ever been on, you don't just stop. You don't. It's dangerous for one thing, and getting off takes about as long as getting on them. But yeah, they need to work with their physician, and they have reservations in that it's I've had people say to me when I wrap up a program, "I'm nervous now because I'm not going to have the structure." I think that people need that kind of accountability and structure and check-in. And I've discovered, and this was really interesting for me, and truly I've learned as much from my people probably as I've taught them. But I found that when I do a course, if it's a small group, I incorporate a call or two that's just one-on-one. It's just one person with me for 30 minutes, which is kind of like personal coaching, but it's within the context of a short course, a 6-week course. But I find that they're able to talk to me about stuff that they don't want to talk about in front of other people. So that's helpful. And then we can kind of dig down into why this is happening. Because I'll give you, for instance, when you go food shopping, who does the shopping? Is it you as an adult? Is it you as a kid? Maybe you didn't have enough to eat as a kid, and maybe you go and you're making choices. You're just choosing a lot of food because you have fear around food. I mean, sometimes people make food choices because it's a substitute for love. It's a substitute for the ability to deal with a situation. It's it's huge. It's fascinating, but it's individual too. So I enjoy that one-on-one time trying to help people get an aha moment. So it just goes on. But people getting ready to do this, I stress to them that it's not a diet, it's a lifestyle, and they're not going to be judged. And they need to be proud of themselves for any step that they take. So when people email me and they say, I drank water today, I didn't have any soda, high five yourself. Yay, you. This is great. This is huge. You just need to do it again tomorrow. And I have someone who will email me and say, I had a pizza and I had a Pepsi. It's okay. It's just every other day, except that treat of Pepsi has to be, or it doesn't have to be, it's in your best interest for it to be water, bubbly water, and not fruit juice either, because fruit juice that goes right to fat. It's sugar. It's just you're drinking sugar. If you're going to have fruit, have the whole fruit, because that fiber in the whole fruit slows down the absorption of the sugar in your body. And by the way, people don't understand either that when they're making new fat cells, their heart has to pump harder because all those fat cells have blood supply. So be kind to your heart and just get off the processed foods. It will just make you feel amazing too. And people feel successful too, because they know this is not easy what we're doing here. So I make sure they know that they should be proud of themselves.
Sure. So adding, going back to that food solution discussion, so adding food as an option, whether, you're doing, other things in coordination with your doctor, of course,
Mhm.
but adding on food as a solution. So you're saying, if I understood you correctly, people have reservations because of their prior experiences with food and not necessarily just right now, hey, it's going to help with my depression.
Yeah, I think that people have tried so many diets that there's that little voice in their head that says, "Yeah, we'll try it," but we've just never been able to do it before. So I think it's important for people to understand that this is different. This is not what I share with people, what I teach is not a diet. It's not a diet because diets don't work. Diets scream misery. I mean, when have you ever heard somebody say, "I'm on a diet. It's great." It's like, "Oh, I can't eat. I'm holding up a carrot stick or a celery stick. I can't have what I usually want because I have to drop 10 pounds for a wedding," kind of thing. So yeah, I think it's multi-layered. It's multi-layered.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, what are some first steps, regardless of, I mean, you probably have as many people as you work with, you have that many individual situations that you have to
Mhm,
deal with.
mhm.
As far as a first step in overcoming, okay, I have chronic depression, how can I make those different food choices to really transition? What first steps would you suggest, or do you suggest with your current
Yeah.
people that you work with?
Yes, I do. The main thing is to make a transition, whether it's quick or slowly, from processed foods to whole healthy foods. Because so much of depression is caused by inflammation in your gut. I mean, we hear your gut is your second brain. Well, your gut telegraphs up to your head, hey, we're inflamed down here. Things are messed up. And it can manifest as depression. You don't necessarily get a brain ache, you get a headache, but that's more of a vascular thing. But when your gut is telegraphing that message that it's manifesting as depression, you can that's inflammation. And if you tamp down the inflammation in your body and your brain by eating whole healthy food, getting off the processed foods, you have to start feeling better. You just have to start feeling better. And there's been research done with not just depression, but with bipolar, with ADHD kids getting off sugar and processed foods. So it's just the processed foods. I mean, if there was one thing that I could just say as a message is just reduce the processed foods. If you feel you just can't stop them, reduce them, put whole healthy food on your plate and get that Pop Tart out of your life. Because doing that is going to it'll do a bunch of things. You'll feel better mentally, you'll feel better physically, you'll probably sleep better, you'll probably lose weight, your gut health will be better. Any intestinal issues that you have, and people have all kinds of, the irritable bowel syndrome. I mean, if you eat foods that are going to support your gut health, all that stuff will change. It will change because food is medicine. And food is also poison because if it's the wrong kind, if it's, I mean, I know I'm beating up on Pop Tarts, but I'll throw in Oreo cookies today just to kind of level the playing field. But all that stuff is amping up your inflammation. And if depression is in your gene pool, you are very likely to become depressed if your inflammation level in your body is high. I had people ask me, Michelle, what was it that you got off your plate out of your diet that made the difference? Was it sugar? Was it gluten? Was it dairy? And back when I was writing my first book, I really didn't know what I was done. And I was too scared to go eating those things, putting them back into my diet because I didn't want to feel like that. I just didn't want to live as a depressed person again. So I was scared straight, is what I was. But toward the end of writing that book, I started reading more because I'm reading and learning all the time about this stuff because it's such a deep well. I started reading about inflammation. And what I learned was that the way we eat, our processed food diet, has us on a slow burn all the time. And that causes a whole host of problems, including depression. So if you're depressed, you want to eat to reduce that level of inflammation in your body and your brain, and you'll start to feel better. And I will share that there are times when I will eat a little widely and I can start to feel things getting a little weird. And you better know that I go right back on the straight and narrow in a day or two. I'm golden. But that's how sensitive some people are. I happen to be, unfortunately, one of them, or fortunately or unfortunately, because processed food is affecting all of us, whether it manifests as depression or illness. Even if you say, hey, doesn't matter to me, I can go to the drive-through and eat whatever, burgers and fries, and it just doesn't, and my soda, it doesn't matter. It does matter. Eventually, it will catch up to you. So I encourage people, just back off the processed foods, back them off. Go eat an apple. You want something out of a box? Go eat an apple and see if you still want that something out of the box. Maybe, maybe not. Maybe you'll eat less of it. That's another thing. Just set yourself up so you're going to eat less of what is hurting you.
Sure. Now, do you have any success stories that you could perhaps share a story of how you've worked with not only your own story, that's a success story in and of
Yeah.
itself, but others that you've worked with who have made that transition to better food choices and really overcome or at least decreased their chronic depression?
I have a client who um, has had a relatively tragic life, and lost her mother very early. Difficult childhood. Had a brain injury. Is on heavy medication for that, and got fell in love, got married, had a baby, and 7 months after she had her baby, her husband dropped dead from a heart attack at 42.
Wow.
So she has issues, and she tends to turn to food. And she also, after her mother died, there wasn't a lot of food. It's not that they couldn't afford it, it's just that it wasn't, the food wasn't in the fridge. So she has some issues around food. She has some issues around mood. And we work with her. I work with her. She and I work together because we're a team to suggest suggest options. Sometimes, I mean, my people can always email me, and she'll email me and she'll say, I can't think what to have for breakfast. I'm sick of this. I'm sick of that. And I'll email her back and I'll say, well, how about some oatmeal with some chia seeds and fresh raspberries, a little almond milk, that kind of thing. And she'll say, oh, what a great idea. Why didn't I think of that? And she'll have it. So she is in a place now, after we've been working together for a few years, where she's happy with her life. She feels level most days. And as I said before, we all go through stuff and life happens, but she's really leveled off, and she's really learned what choices support her and what choices are going to challenge her. Maybe she'll eat something she shouldn't today, and tomorrow she'll be challenged. She'll feel challenged. She'll feel a little down. She'll feel anxious. She'll feel nervous. She'll feel um, all those feelings that we feel on those not so great days. But I would call her probably my best success story to date, because she had so many things that she was dealing with. And now she gets it. Now she knows what to do. And if she has a question, she knows she can email me and I'll get right back to her.
Oh, absolutely. That's amazing that
Yeah.
how she made that transition, changing food, but also changing her mentality, her mindset
Yeah.
to want to do those things and
Hmm.
help herself.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
Oh. Well, Cheryl, how can people get in contact with you?
They can get in contact with me a couple of different ways. They can visit my main blog is thinstronghealthy.com. And they can have access there to recipes and resources and books and all my blog posts, and they're welcome to visit there anytime. And they can also work with me in thehealthyeatingclub.com, and that's my membership website. And that is where they would get information and some training on a different topic every month. And they would have email access to me. And I have 2 live calls with that community every month. One is a topic and Q&A, and then sometimes it's another topic, but often I will help them figure out how to cook something. I'll show them how to cook something, and Q&A. So it's a little fluid, but the healthyeatingclub.com is that's my baby these days. So and they can email me anytime at Cheryl@thinstronghealthy.com.
Wonderful. We will include all of those in the show notes.
Super.
Cheryl, it's been amazing. I love your own story and how
Thank you.
you pay it forward and help so many people with your individual programs or just getting the word out about the food choices.
Yeah. Thank you, Michelle. And again, thank you for the opportunity to speak to your audience. I this can't be the story can't be told enough because people can make huge changes in their lives and they need to be empowered.